Um, have you got a motif ready? Yes.
I was gonna, I was just gonna go back to, I was gonna go back to my tried and tested one, but I haven't done it for a few weeks,
Sure.
so
What
I could
were you
absolutely
saying,
stuff
Red?
it. Stop it.
You're,
Save it
yeah.
for the podcast.
No,
Save
but
it for the. Save
that's
it.
for Red. That's for
This is
Red.
it's premium content. You know. All right. Let's just give it a go and see how it goes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 7 of the Board Game Gateway podcast. My name is Neba, and I am joined today by Mr. Ralph.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
And for the first time in our illustrious career, I say having only recorded 6 podcasts to this point, we are actually welcoming our very first guest, friend of the show, friend of Ralph, Mr. Red, Mr. Redmond. How are you, sir? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
That's great to hear. Oh no, Ralph, I totally forgot the motif. I've given you guys crap about it for 2 weeks, and I totally forgot to do it. No, it's okay.
That.
No, I can do it, right? We'll just do it right now. Ready?
There's no redos in Board Game Gateway, mate. Once you finish your turn, that's it.
But
you let go of the piece.
Touch move. The Board Game Gateway, but it is the place where you can find your entry point into the world of board gaming. Yes, got it. Still got it in there.
That's not bad. I like it.
Still got it in there.
Nice.
If that's not the quality of the podcast that you've come to know, then I don't know what is. I don't think I'm going to hear the end of it from Matt or from Blake or from any of you guys. But anyway, if this is the first time you're tuning in to our podcast, we love to have a bit of a chat about obviously board games and tabletop games, anything that we can play around the tabletop. And we are very excited to welcome Red because he is going to be having a chat about a couple of games, Betrayal at the House on the Hill later in the podcast. So we're excited to talk about that. And we're also going to have a chat about some of the games that we've been playing this week. And Ralph, I'd like to open with you. What games have you been playing this week? What in the past, you weren't with the last recording, so you've probably got a lot more ammo under your belt. But hit us with something that you've been playing at the moment.
Yeah, so we touched last week about Board Game Arena, which is a website that you can actually play board games, in real time or turn by turn. So I'm currently in a turn by turn game of Gaia Project, and I'm playing it with 3 other fellas. And we all have full-time jobs, and tell you what, you got 2 days to take your turn, and I think some of us are already pretty much out of time. So,
wow.
So it is quite rough because if I take my turn, someone else will have to log in and do their turn. So manage that with 4 people is quite tough. But yeah, I haven't actually got any games to the actual tabletop this week, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, still, Board Game Arena still counts.
Definitely.
And Tabletop Simulator. And Yukata or whatever it's called, or any online any site counts. We don't discard them. The Gaia Project I haven't played yet. It is a darling of the board game scene, but it is the sequel to Terra Mystica, pretty much. It's very much a quintessential terraforming sort of thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. So we'll probably talk about it in a later episode in more detail, but essentially it's kind of a Euro game where you sort of slowly take your moves and you get stronger as you play. It's quite a complex one, so I'm actually struggling to get my head around it, and I've only had 2 games of it. I've never won, so not a bad record, but it is a lot of fun where you sort of just terraform planets and build things on them like buildings and things. So I'm probably not doing it justice. I've only had 2 or 3 games of it, but it's a lot of fun.
I was going to say, if you're not into the board gaming scene, just what people would probably go, terraforming a planet. That sounds like it should be fun. And believe me, it is fun. It very much is. We have a whole game completely devoted to terraforming a single planet, which is actually a favorite by a couple of our things. But yeah, that's good to hear. Red, we will pass to you as well. What have you... look, you haven't recorded with us before, so you've got the entirety of your existence to pull from.
I want to know, Red, actually, what was your sort of gateway game, the thing that actually sort of got you gaming?
That's a very good question.
Great question, actually. I think for me, big gateway board game beyond just your sort of family game night type of games was actually Catan. It was
Oh,
Ooh,
actually
right.
a
uh,
classic.
yeah, Ralph and I bonded over it fairly early on. He asked me what I was doing one weekend at work, which also alludes to how I know Ralph and ergo I'm here tonight. We met at work. He asked me what I was doing one weekend, and after the required amount of kind of sussing each other out and whether you can discuss these sorts of things openly, I said, yeah, played a board game over the weekend with some friends. He asked me what one, and yeah, it was Catan. And from that point forward, Ralph has actually been my guide on a lot of games, which is fantastic for me because I quite like board games and don't like reading rule books. So yeah,
We all need a rules law master in our board game group, don't we?
It was actually funny because we worked at a law firm as well, and we hated reading.
Look, I don't. I was about to say I don't know anyone who likes reading it, and I'm like, no, I know a lot of people who like reading, but reading rule books is a very specific kind of beast. I think it's very much a you know, it's you learn it's like reading non-fiction but for the purposes of it's like why am I doing this? Like it's reading an instruction manual and then going, oh, now I need to actually do something here. So yeah, oh, that's great to hear. It's good to hear that. Look, the places where we meet each other, I think, is going to be is a topic that we could talk about in earnest as well. Catan is always a classic. It is one of those games that I'm very much I respect for what it does. And it's been around for a long time now. It's not it is
Yeah.
not it's not a spring chicken anymore.
No, definitely not. My wife and I actually definitely moved on from Catan. But so much so, like my brother came over with his girlfriend, and she's not really a gamer. Everything's new to her, so we play Catan, much to my disappointment. And
To your chagrin.
yeah, so what we did, I just sort of to prove to my brother, it's like it doesn't really hold up in my eyes. I can told him like after everyone puts their initial houses and sort of plans, I like what they do. My wife and I wrote in our phone which color would win the game based off their starting positions, and we're right. Like, so I'm very interested about those Catan tournaments to see how a pro player would sort of change their strategy depending on starting locations and things. But I don't have the patience to watch them play that because it's probably a very quiet affair, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, look, I saw an interesting post on Reddit, the board game subreddit yesterday, which said that there was this group of guys that did a 12-hour game of Catan. But they did
Oh,
it on purpose. They had like all four expansions in one hit, and I was like I struggle to play Twilight Imperium for 4 hours. God help me if I'm playing Catan for that long. The other thing which I found interesting that you said, Ralph, is to see how it differs in pro play, which
yeah.
I found when I've been watching. I've actually watched it kind of a bit, and I found that a lot of it comes down to actually players know the value of resources. They know approximately one sheep is worth this
Mm,
amount of wood based on the locations and numbers. So they go,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
a lot of it becomes less about, hey, I'll trade you
yeah. It's the
one sheep,
economy of the
two
product.
sheep for a
Yeah,
wood, sheep for wood,
yeah.
when they know that it's like, no, you have to give me three sheep for a wood for it
But
to actually make sense or whatever it is.
I tell you what, 12 hours of Catan, at that point, I'll just be like, take my sheep, take it. I don't want this shit anymore.
Yeah, I suppose I can imagine so. But look, turning from your gateway game of choice, Mister Red, which
Catan.
Catan, what would you say is your flavor of the month, if you will? What are you currently vibing? What do you like playing?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I'm still somewhat limited with the board games I have at home, but it is expanding. But I definitely think the two games I am vibing right now is Betrayal at the House on the Hill, which is good because that's why we're here. And
Yep,
it's
we can have a good chat
really
about that soon.
but also, I'm quite a big fan of another game called Quacks of Quedlinburg, which is named ridiculously but plays so well. That is such a fun game.
Yeah, Quacks of Quedlinburg is. Do we all own it? I know I own it. Do you? Yeah, we all own it. We all own Quacks of Quedlinburg. Just from the name
Yeah.
alone, it's one of my favorite games. It's like there's like when I remember when I told my wife about it, she's like, "What the hell is this game?" I'm like, "Well, it's the Quacks of Quedlinburg." She goes, "Yeah, but what does that mean?" I go, "It's fun. Don't worry about it."
It sounds like an Amish album cover or
Yeah, yeah. I can understand that. Now I think we may have lost Ralph. So what we're gonna do? Oh, he's back. There he is. Discord. You froze up for us there, Ralph, but you're back. It's all
oh,
good.
good.
And then I'm just gonna cut out from the oops and then go from there. But Quacks of Quedlinburg, that's a great game. I think that you're well on your way to having a good collection if you've got Quacks in your collection because it is truly one of those games that we are going to be talking about as our gateway game of the week in the near future. It's certainly one of those ones. I think the only rule change that I would make about it is that they're like, hey, everyone should only do simultaneous pulls in the last round. And I'm like, nah, we all do simultaneous pull from round number one. I don't care if it slows the game down. It's a lot more fun when everyone can see that. But that's a really good start though, Red. I have a lot of respect for anyone who goes, oh, this is I've only just started and they name two games. I'm like, no, that's not like, some people when they go, I've just started my gaming collection. Oh, what have you got? Oh, I've got like and just one. And I'm like, okay, all right, that's also a start. Yeah, good. All right,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
on
good on
we're on
you. We're not judging those people,
No,
but
not at
obviously,
all.
but,
Not at all.
yeah, we're just having a drive, that's all.
That's awesome.
But I
All
know
right.
Red, dabbles in some of the heavier games as well, like, he's mentioned Spirit Island to me, and I know he was in a bit of a rotating roster of Gloomhaven. Red, do you wanna talk a bit about that experience?
Ooh.
Yeah, look, Gloomhaven is a really big game. I was again blessed to have someone else who knew the rules, and yeah, fortunately, they were also able to help guide my move because yeah, there is a lot going on there, but certainly
Yeah.
a fun game. There's a lot of narrative components to it, and yeah, if you can get a group of people around, it's a really fun way to spend an afternoon.
Yeah, very big game is kind of an understatement for Gloomhaven. I think they've said what it's over 80 hours of content in the game, I believe. So if you're down for a dungeon crawler and you like playing that, go for it. So I look. It's good to know that he dabbles in the number one ranked game of all time according to Board Game Geek. Oh, that's all right. But speaking of, we kind of touched on our the Quacks of Quedlinburg as an upcoming gateway game of the week, but we'd actually like to start having a bit of a chat about that now, because we are going to have a chat this week about a game called Cairn. Not K, Cairn, and my mind was going Cairns, like the city in Australia, but then I'm like, I can't say the S because it's not there. And this one was suggested by Ralph. Ralph was suggested this game for our
Yeah.
gateway game of the week. So we're going to let you introduce it, Ralph, but
Yeah,
I'm very
sure
excited to
thing.
have a chat about this one.
Yeah, definitely, 'cause, you just had your first game of it now, really,
I did.
so Can is a fantastic game, definitely a gateway game for me. It's a two-player game where everyone's plays, like, basically one side, one's a blue player and the other one's, like, an orange player, and you have, like, a team of 3 to start, but eventually you could get up to 5 pieces to move around on the board. And essentially, what you want to do is get to the other side of the board. So think of like sort of a 3 by 6 or so hexes of board, like a chessboard in a way. But the game is quite pretty. It's quite colorful as well. So the way the game works is you can move orthogonally, so sideways or diagonally in a way as well, and you can go backwards. And you just want to get to the other end of the board. Now, what's really cool is you have these two little things in the middle. They're called megaliths or monoliths. And the way it works is if your character stands on that little section, you get a bit of a perk or a power up. And that could just be remove one of your opponent's pieces from the board. It could be like a teleport, so you can teleport to the other side of the map in a way, or it could just be simple as do another turn or take another or move an additional hex. sort of thing. And what's interesting is during the game, as you reach the other side of the board, more of these turn up. So you could have a bit of a chain reaction to the game, to your move, which is really interesting. So essentially, once you move your player off the map, you get a point. You get to build another megalith. You get to pick which one goes on there out of two options, and each game's different because in one game the most you'll see is like six of these megaliths or these power up boosts, and I think there's about 12 in the game, so you won't actually see them all during your game. So that will get you a point when you move off the map. The other way you can get a point is by arranging your little figurines in a certain shape to your opponent's piece, and you'll actually banish them by forming that shape and removing them off the board. When you do that, you can build a megalith as well, and that will get you a point. So first to 3 points wins, and that's pretty much the game. The thing that makes this game interesting for me is when you do a move, that your actions are on these little tiles. So when you move up or down or left or right, you actually flip that tile over. So then you're on your opponent's turn, they don't get the option to move up, down, left, or right. They get the options to move diagonally. So they can go to the top left or the top right or bottom left or bottom right. So you're constantly taking moves away from your opponent because your opponent might really want to go straight to kill you, but you've taken that option away from them. So you're not only thinking of what you do, but also what your opponent does, or I don't want my opponent to do this. So
Mm.
there's quite a bit of depth to this game. But Anth, what did you think of it on your first game?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on. I actually really enjoyed this for my first game. So for those of you who are, which you kind of touched on, Ralph, this is a bit of a strategy game, and this would be what I would say an introduction to the strategy sort of genre. So the grid, like the field, is a 5x5 grid, and you can either, as you said, you can either move one of your shamans, that's what just pieces are called. You
Hmm.
move them, you can jump them, or you can what was the third action? You can spawn
You
another
can
one.
spawn another one. Yeah.
Yeah, so you start with 3. You can have up to 5 on the board, and that's it. You can either move, you jump an opponent to position yourself to get a bit of a boost, or you can spawn in another one. That's the whole game. The
Hmm.
and so I really enjoyed this game. I really liked it. I liked the challenge that it presented. You kind of sold it to me on going, oh, this is a 2-player game. It's kind of a bit of a strategy game. We'll see how we go, and you know, there were a couple of things that confused me. So you kind of mentioned, as you mentioned, it's first to 3 points, and you gain points
Hmm.
by spawning in the megaliths. And the
Yep.
only way that you can do that is by banishing your opponent's pieces or by running your piece off their side of the board, like some sort of weird American football running back, charging the line. But it is tactical because you can only get a point if you spawn the megalith on a place where there was not one before.
Yep.
So it was a really interesting challenge because we had to balance this whole, okay, it's very much a positioning battle because I was moving pieces around and you were moving pieces around. As you said, there were moves where I was looking at my pieces going, okay, I really want to try and move forward. But if I move forward, that will allow the diagonal. He will get a diagonal move. And if I get a diagonal move, he's going to move directly into there and kill my person, gaining a point, setting me back. So you had to really time what was going on, how this was going
Yeah.
down. You had to time your push. And the great thing is, well, you can move backwards. So as you pointed out to me a few times, but it really did help. It's like I didn't need to advance forward yet. I actually kind of was positioning myself to kind of split. Now I ended up winning this game 3-2.
Oh, I, I,
Um,
I don't mean to brag, but I was throwing it a little bit.
I think you were. I thought you were, but there were a few moments where I was kind of like, I could see where the strategy was coming in, and I could see where I was in a bad position. I'm like, if I move there, I'm in a bad position. If I do
Mm.
this, I'm doing a really bad position. But the goal of it was like it ended up being a lot closer than I thought it would be. Now, I came out of it and you were like, "What did you think?" And I said, "I don't want to tell you because we have a podcast to record." But my honest reaction was, I wanted to play one immediately straight after. I wanted to go
Oh,
put
we
your
will.
shamans back on the board. We're about to go for round two because I
Yeah.
don't feel like I got a lot out of it. Now,
Well, Reddit.
there's
Sorry.
no asymmetry here, so it's kind of like chess like, but the variability comes from, there's a whole bunch of different megaliths that you can spawn in to
Mhm.
start on the board. Are they always the same two that
No,
start on
no,
the board?
it's always random. It's
Okay,
always
so
random.
I wasn't, but then where they come in later is also dependent on where the position of the board. So your moves are always the same, but the board states will always be different, and that's where I got really excited about that. Now I've spoken about it a bit. Red, we're gonna pass over to you because you've played this one as well, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe you own it,
Um,
Red.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
do actually. I have this one at home.
well, see,
But
look, his collections are he's I don't know, his
He
collections
already
just like
bought it.
going, it's going up
He
and up at the moment.
he bought it during this podcast, I think.
I think I'm gonna have to bloody buy it after this podcast. That's how good. But I want to get your take on this, Red, because I'm new to it. You've played a bit more than I have, but I want your thoughts on this game.
yeah, no, look, it's a really fun game actually, and Ralph is the one who again showed me this game, and he hit me with the exact same sales pitch, so it's definitely earnest. And in true fashion, he also threw the first game to entice me to play again, and then proceeded to stomp me about 5 games in a row. So it's definitely one of those games where you can finish it very quickly and then you just sort of want to pick it back up again. It's something that kicks around at home now. So if there ever is a situation where there's 5, 10 minutes of downtime, my wife and I will crack it out and we'll just have a run through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that time limit though, I don't know if it felt like it was a bit long in terms of how I say it's a long. It was 10 minutes the game took us, but I, as the first player, was asking a lot of questions. I will say, Ralph, the bit that I found the most confusing was how victory points were actually, like, how buildings went down. That kind of confused me at the start, but once I got over
Yep.
that, I was kind of. I
Yeah,
wonder if this game is like in always at that consistent 6 to 7 mark, but you've played a bit more than I have.
oh yeah, I've played this a bunch more. I actually brought this into our workplace one time on one of those Friday night drinks, and Red and I played a few games with a beer. So that was just a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, this game, I tend to take my moves rather quickly. I tend to see something happening and plan that 2 moves ahead, like to cancel out what my opponent might do. But I've played this with my wife, and my wife and a friend of mine were playing on a team, and they were so determined to beat me. Now, eventually they did, but the thing is, they took maybe 5 minutes to take one turn because it really can. You can analyze over this as much as you can, especially later in the game when there's like 4 or 5 things you can do a chain reaction of. So, and what's really interesting, like I mentioned, you can take moves away from your opponent. Like if they really want to go straight, you can take that action so they can't. But there's ways around it. Like once you see these megaliths and you see the combos, you're like, oh, if I step on this one, I can change where my little meeple is. I can swap it with my opponent and then put them in a dangerous location. And then that could trigger something else all on your turn. So it really opens up. You'll see it as we play more of it, Anth.
Yeah, and I found those powers to be really straightforward. We did actually bring in the power of being able to move one of your shamans, and I put that right on my goal line, and I realized that was a bit of a dangerous play. But the what made it not as dangerous, which you were saying, which is that you kind of mentioned, well, you still have to build the building, so I have to waste a turn getting off that building, and then I've
Yeah,
put myself on your front row to potential. But you could have stepped back and then stepped onto it, and vice versa. There's a few things
that's right.
that could have been done, but
Yeah,
the game itself, what I really liked about it is that this is one of those games where I went, oh, I've only got 3 actions I can do, but it just changes. I was like, oh, you can either go orthogonally or diagonally, or you can jump yourself, or you can jump over an opponent, right? Or that's it, or you spawn on the white
another
section or
dude on the
the black.
map. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's the whole game in a nutshell, not including the powers. But then I was like, huh, All right. Now, BGG says this game should be playing in 25. And I'm like, I can see that, but that would feel like that would be way too long for one of these games. Now, the analysis paralysis or AP prone players, I absolutely can see that some players would have some issues with that. I um I personally had a couple of moments where I was like, I spent maybe a couple of minutes thinking about what would happen. Not more about what you were going to do, but more so like, well, if I do this, then that would mean you could do this. Not
Yep.
so much going, well, Ralph's trying to do this, so I should try and do that.
Yeah, I think the analysis paralysis here, the way I would describe this, it's kind of like checkers, but with power ups in a
Yeah.
way. Um, and it's kind of like, how long can a game of checkers be? It could be over in 5 minutes. If people really stare at the board and contemplate life, it could take a few hours. Like, it really depends on the players. I tend to live dangerously and I'll just take my move within 5 seconds.
Well, apparently it works for you. Isn't that right, Red? If he's that dominant at this game.
And no, absolutely. And he also has the significant advantage of reading the effect of the monoliths, whereas I like to land on them and find out what happens after.
Right.
That's
Right.
living dangerously as well.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I'm pretty good at this game, but then that also means no one wants to play with me. So
You haven't found the right friends. That's like
yeah, I
I
think
think you
so.
have now because I used to find this with chess, which is that I used to be really better than a lot of people, but then Blake, who is another host of the podcast, who you all know, but my cousin Tom, they're a lot better than me, and I very much in that I'm not done. Like I can win and have won against them, so I'm very much in that I need to continue to try and beat these damn dudes at chess. And there's other games as well. Like Tom tends to be our very big. He's the strategy head. You give him like a
Mhm.
game of like Memoir 44 or things where he has to start making strategic decisions. He very quickly can calculate those things in his head.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things where with Seven Wonders Duel, I win pretty consistently against my wife Georgie. However, I this is the greatest compliment I can give to anyone when we play a board game, which is I say to her, "You make me play at 100%. Like if I even let off the gas for a second, you will win the game, right?" But so because I want you to know that I'm not just like, oh, you won. Oh, so you're so good. Like, no, it's like, no, I'm going to win. So when you beat me, you know you beat me at my best. Like, it was not a
Yeah.
fluke.
That
I,
Seven Wonders Duel is a game that my wife, she beats me pretty much every time at that game. I am terrible at it.
how about you, Red? How's your wife with Khan? How do you find, like, is there a dominant one in your relationship, or do you find that it's kind of 50-50 that, when you guys are playing?
No, absolutely. I feel like with this game in particular, it's very well balanced. And I mean, that just makes it fun and engaging, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Quacks is a different story, isn't it, Red?
My wife is cursed with terrible luck, and it is something that brings me so much joy. So quack is something where there is a very heavy skew going on. And we've tried a number of different things, including pulling the draws out and revealing them at every single round, which, like you say, does slow the game. But
Mm.
she just wanted that, conviction that there was nothing else happening there. So
Lauren,
quack.
if you're listening, just while he's not watching, just take all the white ones out of your bag and just see how long it takes for Red to notice. Because you'll win, but you gotta win by a little bit, not by a mile. So just
she she needs to play with the power up in Quacks that allows you to, if the next one that you pull or the previous ones that you pull were white, you get extra bonus coins or whatever it is. There's one of those powers. So for those, I'm sure there's a power in Quacks of Quedlinburg that says for every like previous white before you busted, there's a
oh
power up or
yes,
like a bonus. So she
I think
needs to
it's
go
one of the
hard into
yellow
that.
ones.
Yeah, she has to go hard into that. One of the Mandrake. The Mandrake ones are always got the good powers.
They're fun. They're the best ones.
But yeah, look, I really have to. I've only played one game of this so far, but I was immediately disappointed that there is not a BGA adaptation of this yet because
Mm,
I could honestly play this a lot more. It
yeah.
immediately gets my initial stamp of approval for the initial. I don't know how much legs it will have, but it did make me immediately go. I almost want to play this game and go buy it immediately because that's
Oh,
how much I
it's
was
a cheap
enjoying it.
game. I think it's like a $30 or $40 game, and it looks beautiful in person as well. We played it on Tabletop Simulator. The mod is okay, but it really doesn't do it justice. It looks beautiful on the table.
It did continue our streak of talking about games that have a 5x5 grid in it. So last week we talked about Targi, which was 5x5. Oh no, we did it. No, that was the week before. I can't remember. I thought.
We've restarted the streak.
Oh no,
Zero
no!
days without an accident.
Oh no, less than half an hour. I can't remember specifically which one, but but a 5x5 grid seems to be a bit of a thing that people talk about. No, it was last week because that's right. We did talk about Targi last week. And yeah, that's so 2 weeks in a row we've talked about a game of 5x. I should stop talking. We should move on. But that was that was Cairn. So look, I'm Australian, right? So I'm like, I want to say Cairns, but
Well,
it honestly could be Cairn. I don't know. I feel like
Can.
yeah, Cairn. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like it's that's what my mind wants me to say. Anyway, it was designed by Christian Martinez. The art was done by Vincent Joubert and was released in 2019. So it's only 3 years old, so relatively new. And published by the Board Game Box or Madagot was the guys that Madagot. So look, that was our gateway game of the week, and now we'd like to go and have a chat about the what your big flavor of the week. Now, Red, we got you on here because you and Ralph have been playing Betrayal at the House on the Hill. You've been playing the Legacy version, but we're not going to be talking about that, so don't worry, there's no spoilers. But we did want to bring up this game, Betrayal at the House on the Hill, because this is honestly one of those games that I think is very, very polarizing in this hobby. However, almost everyone that I have talked to who has played this game has said, yeah, I love it. Like, I really love this game. There's some issues, but I love this game.
Oh, there's so many issues. Before we dive into it, I actually want to know what are your favorite horror movies or your horror tropes?
That is a question I was not expecting you to ask. I will
Yeah.
be very honest. I'm not very much a horror person. I'm very much a scaredy cat when it comes to horror movies. I'm not the biggest fan of being scared. However, I do really I don't mind slasher flicks, but I'm not a big fan of like the actual terror, if you will. That's where I start doing that. I very much my favorite one is kind of, look, I don't know if you count it as a horror movie, but Aliens is one of my favorite ones.
Fantastic movie, Aliens.
So that's like, but look, scared the crap out of me. Loved it for the action sequences that it brought it, but like most of the time I'm sitting there going, I don't, so I was not a big fan of it. But look, I say not a big fan of it. I was a fan of it. I didn't like the feeling.
Fair enough. You felt violated by the movie.
Yes.
Terrible. Red, what's one of your classics or your favorite?
A big fan of the Conjuring universe. I think it's
love The
a
Conjuring.
really, really good theme. I think, it's well written, well acted, so it's horrifying. Yeah, I would recommend it to anyone.
For me, the most scariest thing I've seen was the first horror, I use horror in italics here, movie that I saw was The Mummy with Brendan Fraser.
Oh, that's not a horror movie.
Dude,
that's weak. I thought mine was a cop out.
I'll give you a proper horror movie later. But I was probably like 6 or 7 when I watched this at the cinema, and that scene where those little scarabs, cockroaches go under your skin, I could not sleep for weeks.
Yeah, the scarabs freaked me out too. That did freak me out. Look, I'll give you that.
That's a great movie.
It was.
But I love Hereditary. Man, so many great moments in that movie. But I'd say this game is kind of a bit of The Conjuring, and also this game is kind of like Monster House, the animated movie. But yeah, Red, I know you know and love this game, so I might get you to sort of inform our audience as to what this game is. Betrayal at the House on the Hill.
Absolutely. Normally I have someone else reading the rule books on this one, so if I do step out of bounds, just feel free to jump in.
Don't
But
worry about the rules. We just kind of care about.
Just an
Could you?
overview,
Yeah,
mate.
could you explain the game to someone who hasn't played it before?
absolutely. So the premise of Betrayal at the House on the Hill is you and a group of friends have all turned up to this house. When you start, the house only has three revealed tiles, and that is a upper landing tile, your main lobby area, and then the basement. You can move within the house, and there are door frames on each of the tiles. There's a varying amount of door frames, so not every tile will have more than one door. And as you move into empty spaces, you will then procedurally draw tiles from a tile stack that matches the floor you're on. Each one of those tiles will have a unique effect, modifier, or a icon that will indicate whether there is an event that takes place in the room or whether there is an omen of bad portents that happens in that room.
Hmm.
So it's always different every time you play. There are items and omens that you collect that change the way the game will play for you. They will have special effects, and crucially, sometimes they will change your stats. Each character will have four different stats, two mental, two physical, and a lot of the game is about adding or removing those stats and then using those stats to make what are called trait rolls, where you usually will roll a corresponding amount of dice related to that trait in the hopes of achieving a certain value. So, in a nutshell, that is effectively how the game is set up. The
Yeah.
real fun in the game comes from what's called the haunt. Effectively, the more tiles you reveal that have omen cards on them, the more rolls you do that will try to trigger something called the haunt. If you ever roll, is it
L
more or fewer?
It's less than the amount of omens out at the current time. So, omens are typically your horror tropes, so items that you typically find. It could be like a cursed ring, it could
The
be a Horus
Crow.
symbol, yeah, a madman or a spirit board, those sort of tropes.
Absolutely. And as usual, Ralph managed to save the day by knowing the rules. So thank you very much, Ralph.
That's alright, it's a clutch play.
No, absolutely. But once you fail a haunt roll, you trigger the haunt event. And there are over 50 haunts in the base game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Hmm.
sounds about right.
There is a lot of variety to the game, and then the haunt is decided by the item that you drew in the room that you drew it in. I absolutely love this game. I can understand why it's polarizing. It is extremely swingy. There is, with a game like this, it's always going to be very difficult to balance. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of yeah.
But you kind of have to be okay with this game is an experience. You know,
Yeah.
there is some strategy involved on your turn, but essentially you got to just be ready for a fun time, a bit of a laugh, and you got to really indulge in those horror movie tropes in a way as well. But Red, what happens when someone actually does a haunt and you know, the second phase of the game sort of begins?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the fun bit. One of the friends that you entered the house with, or none of your friends, or more than one of your friends, will become the betrayer. So the traitor, traitors, or the board game itself, depending on the haunt you draw, will have a separate set of conditions to what the heroes have. And at that point, the groups diverge. You form a strategy. You read through the rules and the premise for your current haunt, and then you both come back and effectively try to usually kill each other. So it is fantastic fun, especially if you have a reluctant traitor, because
Oh
they
yeah,
always feel so guilty
Yeah.
about ruining your day.
Yeah,
yeah,
I really have mixed feelings about this game. I have played it twice, and I got to be the Haunt once, my
mm,
very first game, and my first Haunt didn't go well for us. Sorry, it didn't go well for me.
yep,
I could not do anything as the bad guy. I could not kill people. For some reason I was too slow. And then in the second game, I was on effectively the Scooby Doo gang's side, and I was in that same position where I felt I was unstoppable. This guy, we were fine, and we end up winning the game. But I will come back to that because I don't want to hammer on what I
yeah. We'll talk
don't
about
like
that
about
later.
it. But I
Well,
do want to focus on a couple of things, if you don't mind me just saying though. Like this game though is 18 years old. It was
Yeah.
made. The first version came out in 2004. That's when this game, it's not like I say, quote unquote, modern design, right? But it's not a strategic game. This is, as you said, Ralph, this is a thematic experience where you and your friends get to put on your Scooby Doo hats. But then, unlike a Scooby Doo episode, one of the gang was is Mr. Whitmire, who he was at it all along, and ends up becoming she becomes the person or thing that is going to be haunting that. And that in and
Yeah.
of itself, as you said, Red, the reluctant bad guy is hilarious. When someone's like, I don't want to be the bad guy. Too bad. Go read your separate rule book because you now need to know how you're going to kill us.
Yeah, it's for me, it is kind of one of my favorite games to show people if everyone's a bit of a gamer that they're not a full-time gamer, but like if they're a bit of a gamer and want an experience, this is actually a great experience. You can have haunts that are a bit of a flop. In a way, I remember there's one particular haunt. So a haunt is like a scenario of things that happen. Like it could be that the house is flooding and you need to escape, but all the exits are locked and things like that. It can get very stressful because the house slowly disappears. But the game sort of starts out with you exploring the house. Everyone's just having a good time walking in different rooms, reading horror tropey type cards, and
Good time, he says, when you're all getting haunted in this spooky house.
well, you don't know why you're there. Everyone sort of starts as an investigator, and investigators all have different sort of personalities. You even get to know their hobbies and their birthday, and you can be a little kid or you can be a creepy priest. There's a lot of fun to be had for the whole family. But
He says after saying creepy priest. Oh no, the timing.
well, that's the thing. The priest could be the betrayer. Who knows? Or he could be the savior. Who knows? So that's your story, and you get to develop that, and you get to
That's
share
true.
that with the people that you're playing.
Yeah.
Which is quite amazing. And Red, I've actually messaged you on Facebook just an event card because Red has the most fantastic voice to read out event cards. So whenever we play the game and I give him an event card that I just encountered, I get him to read it out because it just sends shivers down my spine. It really suits the setting. So, Red, if you don't mind indulging me in reading this event card, just to give people a taste as to what they're missing out on.
Am I gonna have to edit in some like creepy music in the back over this
Yes,
podcast?
please.
All
Yes,
right.
that's what we do as well. We have a soundboard.
Hey, future neighbor, get on that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Let's see. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm a little on the spot, but let me try channel it. All
Here we
right.
go.
The left hand. Your hand begins to itch and then burn. The pain is overwhelming, and you can do nothing but clutch your hands and scream. The scream dies in your throat when you realize you can't feel anything in it now. You attempt to wiggle your fingers, and the hand moves of its own accord towards your throat.
Yeah, that's a good example. And then, like, you as the player, you're given certain options that you can do in that
Nice.
scenario, and that can benefit you or be to your detriment. And what's really interesting, there is player elimination, but you can't die before the actual haunt happens. So there's a bit of balancing in that mechanic in a way. But what's interesting, depending on the haunt, some haunts you can't die. So the last time I played this game, my wife was the bad guy, and I decided to shoot her with my gun. This is in the game, and nothing happened. So I thought you should be dead, and I'm like, are you sure you got the rules right? Are you sure? Because that always happens in this game. No one really knows because the rule book is really weird sometimes. But that's kind of what my pet peeve is with this game. Actually, is because some of the rules are unclear, and there is that 5 minutes here and there where everyone's going around the internet trying to find the answer to a very specific scenario.
Yeah.
But this is kind of the game where you have to sort of be okay with sort of house ruling it. And in my opinion, you can house rule this game, but do it for table balance in a way to make the game more interesting.
Yeah, I agree. My biggest gripe from this stems from what you and Red also touched on, which is that this is a thematic experience that you pull out to show people that board gaming is not just, hey, we're going to sit down and do a mental battle, a battle of wits, trying to outwit each other and trying to outthink each other. Whereas
Mm,
instead, you can pull out Betrayal and say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to pretend like we're all investigators, like Scooby Doo gang. And then
yeah.
at some point, something is going to happen and one of us is going to become the bad guy. We don't know who, we don't know what. And that's part of the experience that we're all going to find out. And so you bring this board out, you bring it to your friends and you say, let's play. And then you get to the haunt. And it is a coin flip as to whether or not this is going to be. This is where the game can either be fantastic or it can absolutely fall down. Because when we played this game the first time, my friend, he put on some spooky music in the background, right? So we're playing the first whole half of this game, like, ooh, like what's going on? Your sanity's going down. You have to cut your hand off, as this omen would say. Oh, maybe you got to cut your
Mm,
hand off. Like very thematic. And then the haunt happens, and then as a player, I didn't feel like I was given the chance, as I said, to actually be the bad guy, right? I felt like they were just like they maybe had a better experience because they were like, oh, we're so cool and we're juking you and we're doing stuff. But me as a bad guy, I'm like, I didn't get to kill a single person or do
yeah.
anything, and I really felt like, and that's where it kind of now for me as a board gamer, that's okay because I understand that hey, there's a lot more to this game than this one haunt. I also understand what this product is, but if that was someone's first experience with Betrayal or first experience with a thematic game,
Mm,
that can be a problem because that can be that
yeah.
person's first experience, and then they go, if it was a bad experience, they go and go, ah, like I
Well,
didn't
let
have a
me.
good time.
That's fine. That can happen with this game. Let me share a story as to what happened to me on the very last game we played.
Please
Now,
do share.
Red and our wives, we're playing Betrayal Legacy together, which is a game that is ever changing, and we create our own story throughout the entire board game. So I won't spoil that, but essentially the haunt started, and my wife was the bad guy, and the book said to move her miniature to the basement. So what I said to everyone was, whatever we do, there's no way out of the basement at the moment. Tina is stuck there. If we just don't go to the basement for a while, we're fine. We can do our objective. So what do? I move my figure into the next room to discover what's in the room. The game gave me a trapdoor, put me in the basement. I fell down the stairs. I took physical damage, and then Tina killed me on her first turn. That was my first turn. So
We forgot a very crucial part of that, where he managed to get one move in the basement and managed to reveal a tile that was a door out of the basement.
yeah.
So effectively,
So
Ralph
the
made this announcement that we were fine as long as we didn't explore the basement, then proceeded to reveal a way down to the basement, and then revealed a door out of the basement on the same time.
so the game can be really mean to you, but I tell you what, did we share a laugh? That was hilarious in hindsight, but I was definitely not impressed.
Well,
She
and
was
that's
a very reluctant traitor as well. So the whole time she was ruining us, she was apologizing profusely. So it was such a fun time.
Yeah, it was like
I'm so
a Canadian betrayer or something.
I'm so
It's like, sorry,
sorry.
I'm
Stab.
killing you.
I'm so sorry. Shoot you in the head. Oh, I don't want to
Yeah,
do this.
yeah.
Slices off your. Look, and that look again as I said, right? That's my biggest gripe, right? I like the game. I love the theme, and I love what it does. Even though I'm not the biggest horror buff, I love what it does with that whole idea of like this was my first experience to a very thematic game, a very game that goes. We know we don't have the we understand that the mechanics of this game are here to provide very much a theme, not like a efficiency puzzle. And I love that. I just wish, and a lot of people have
Look,
said the Legacy Edition does actually start to help this quite a bit. And a lot
it
of people have
does.
said that in later editions of the game, I believe that the haunts have been kind of balanced to allow for better play. I don't, it's people say, Ralph's given me the 50-50 symbol, but people have said it's better. But, look, that's just where we are. But look, would I
Well, look,
still play it
Anthony,
again? Yeah,
yeah.
I would. I
Y-
would.
Anthony, you mentioned this game came out in 2004. It actually just has a new edition that came out this year. From what I've heard, it hasn't really fixed much. I watched a Dice Tower review of it a while ago, and it hasn't really fixed much. But for those people who have this game already, have played it to death, they may have repeated the same haunts because there's 50 in the box, but they're random, so you might do a couple repeatedly. there's 50 brand new haunts in this new box. So
Right.
it's definitely worth picking up if you are a diehard Betrayal fan. Personally, I've played the base game a bunch. I've played the expansion a little bit. I had a really fun time with it too. Um, but we're almost finished Betrayal Legacy Red. I think there's probably 4 games left in it, and we're planning to basically nip that in the butt over a weekend coming up. So
How many games are actually in the in Legacy? How many is it? The kind of standard 12-ish kind of in a campaign, or are we looking? How does the
yeah,
actual Legacy edition play?
so there's 13 in the game. There's a prologue and 12 chapters. And I'll tell you what, we played the prologue. And Red, what are your thoughts on the prologue? You know, no spoilers, but what are your thoughts on the prologue?
Enjoyed the prologue.
Sorry, say
I
that again.
Sorry, yeah, no, look, I really enjoyed the prologue. Obviously no spoilers, but it was definitely yeah, just a really good time.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we're all impressed with it. So that was a perfect way to kick off a game. So if you've never played a legacy game before and you have a perfect group, and this sounds like something that's up your alley, definitely recommend you guys play that. You don't even have to play the base game beforehand because the game does teach you all the rules and it doesn't really throw you in the deep end. So um, definitely get on that if it sounds like something you're interested in.
Having played nearly 8 or 9 games of this, who would you say though that the actual Legacy edition is for? Would you like have a think and like who would you say, is it for people who like Legacy? Is it for people who like horror? Like what is your take on who would actually like playing? Because you'd have to be committed for at least 13 games of this. Who is this for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I suppose, look, exactly. If this is up your alley, yeah, I think it's for you already. The cost is just a little bit more expensive than the base game. For the legacy one, it is a game that you could only play through the one time. You can only play those 13 games. You could play more of it after, but you wouldn't play it with different people. So I would say highly recommend it if you have a group of people that are really into this theme and that you can share that experience with them. You can have a laugh. You can name your items. Like I found an elephant gun in Betrayal Legacy, and it's just a weapon, so it's not really a spoiler. But I found the gun. It's called the elephant gun, so I just called it "Where's my elephant gun?" But Red, who do you think Betrayal
Uh,
Legacy is for, mate?
Yeah, look, I mean, I would just kind of repeat what you've already said, like Betrayal Legacy is a legacy game, so you need to be willing to part with it after you're finished. But if you do have a reliable group of people and you are interested in that thematic experience, then I really feel as though the narrative component of Betrayal kind of, speaks for itself.
and
So
I love how we're creating our own narrative with this, because with legacy games you tear cards up, and we've teared cards up in this game. We've been instructed to. We never read them. We literally just tore them in the shredder, sort of thing, uh, because it's not our story. So it'll be very interesting to play it again. If we were so inclined at some point to buy another copy and give that another go. But we really created our own story. You're naming items, you heirloom items to make them stronger, because each player sort of plays a different family line in a way. So like the game sort of goes through different centuries, and you're always the Montagues or something like that, and Red might be the Capulets or something. So it's just really interesting, and it's extremely well done. It does have some balancing issues, but in saying that, the strategy is still there. Like, and if there were people playing this game, I was the trader, and they were working together strategically, so I couldn't attack them, and they were taking me down, and they really overpowered me. So there's definitely a board game there, rather than just an experience. So
Yeah, and look, this game does lean on its theme though. It is more
it
theme
does.
than mechanic heavy, and we know that, right? So you, like you said, you know what you're getting into when you're playing this game, and that's what you have to be okay with. And if that's not what you're feeling at that moment, then you have to know that going in. So,
Yep,
look, I think you guys have hit the nail on the head there with that kind of brief overview. I do think we are going to have a legacy game episode in the future, because there is quite a few other legacy games that I would love to have a chat about.
definitely.
There's a lot of things out there. I own 2 at the moment that I'm trying to find times to get through in
Yeah,
Charterstone, and King's Dilemma. So there's quite a
I,
few things there.
I've got some brand new legacy games, and I'm just waiting for someone to say yes, we can commit to this, and we're keen for it. So, I still want to pick. I've already played through Pandemic Legacy. I still just want to pick up another copy to play it through again with another
Same.
group.
I really want to play Pandemic Legacy, all of them. I want to play 1, 2, and 0. I don't know anything about them, even though they've been out for as long as they have. Somehow they haven't been spoiled yet, so don't spoil them in anywhere for me. But I would be really keen to play those. So look, we're actually coming up pretty close to the hour mark. This has actually been. I was surprised how long we talked about Betrayal. I thought we were going to be pretty quick, but you guys have.
It's such a great game.
And if you're listening to this going, oh, Anthony doesn't like it, please don't misunderstand me. I actually do like this game. I have problems with it, but every game that I have problems with, I always like, there's a game here and I understand what it is. So I would like to think that I think we're going to start wrapping this one up here, because we don't want to be doing an hour and a half episode every week. That was actually a surprise last week. But before we do, I really do have to thank you, Red, for coming on and sharing this with us. We have been very open to wanting to get some people in, and you are the first. You are our first guest, and I want to thank you, mate, and I hope you've enjoyed your time. I hope we haven't ribbed on you too much.
No, thank you for having me. And additionally, I really appreciate all of your negative comments about my favorite game.
Oh, there it is. I knew it was coming. So far. Don't worry. Anyone is allowed to absolutely crap on my favorite games. And in fact, the other host will consistently do it for me. So that's fine.
Definitely.
But we do it out of love. We do primarily because we love this game and this hobby and everything that it is about. And hey, look, if it wasn't for this hobby, you may not have been friends with Ralph now. You may have just been work colleagues. But now you get to share something else, hey?
No, absolutely.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's going to be the end of our episode for this week. Ralph, do you have any shout outs that you'd like to do for us this week?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Red for joining us. It was a lot of fun talking Betrayal with you. Even though sometimes I do feel betrayed by you. You're an absolute gem to play games with, and just looking forward to more of that and sharing that with our friends together. Red, any sign off you would like to sort of tell the people listening?
You've been betrayed by your first guest.
And there it is. There's our title for it. There it is. Absolutely love it. So look, before we go, I do need to give a shout out to our social media and our all of our things. So you can go to our website at www.boardgamegateway.com. You can also go to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/boardgamegateway.com. All of the links are on our website. You can click and find them there. We have a Discord, we have a YouTube, all of these things that we'd love you to go and help us out. If you're enjoying what you're listening to in this podcast, please maybe give us a rate on Apple Podcasts, or if you just enjoyed it, tell your friend. Just say, hey, if you're into board games, maybe we can provide something and get some more people into this hobby. That's why we started this podcast, and that's why we keep doing it, because getting more people in means more people for us to play games with, and more people for us to betray in Betrayed at House on the Hill. So on behalf of myself, Ralph, and Red, I'd like to say thank you very much for spending the last hour with us. We hope to see you again in the next podcast. Thank you for now, and bye-bye. We'll see you later.
See you, everyone. I love this song.
I'm actually like, I'm not playing the music, but I can hear it in my head. I can hear it.